Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about getting started with Django and how to set up a new Django project. We're going to utilize a little bit of an HTML project we created in a previous video, but that's not super critical for this video, so don't worry too much about it. But to get started, we're going to go to djangoproject.com. You're going to want to make sure that you have Python already installed. So if you don't have Python installed, be sure to install Python first. And then also make sure if you have a Mac, make sure that you have Python 3 installed. This is going to be using Python 3. It doesn't really matter which minor version you choose as long as it's 3 point something. So we're going to go to djangoproject.com and we're going to click the big Get Started with Django button. This is going to give you the how-to instructions on how to install Django and how to get Python set up even. But we're going to go ahead and go to a terminal. I'm on Mac. This might look a little bit different for Windows. But we're going to run Python 3 -m pip install Django. So once we have Python installed, we can use it to install Django. And we're going to let it run. And it looks like it finished. So now we're going to do a Django-admin start project. And we're going to name this first Django for now. And then, oops, actually, I need to move to the desktop. So cd desktop, it created those folders in a random spot. So we're going to rerun that on the desktop. And now if I go to my desktop folder, we have first Django here. And we can see we have a manage.py. And then we have a folder with some settings, some URL routing settings. We're going to go ahead and open those up. So as you can see, it was very simple to start off with a simple Django project. Like we already have the files for that. We already have everything going for that. And then we're going to add one more thing. So we're going to do we're going to cd, which is to move into a directory. We're going to move into the first Django folder in terminal. And we're going to run a Python 3 manage.py. So that's going to utilize this Django Python file. And we're going to do a create app or start app. We're going to say first API. And now you can see it's created a secondary folder inside of first Django called first API with even more files. Another, actually this does not have a urls.py file, but it will. And a few other things. We're going to talk about those here in a moment. For now, what we have is a settings file that comes default by Django. And you'll see the database is defaulted to a SQLite file. So SQLite is more of a file than it is a database. And it allows you to run smaller projects on local without having a full database server running. When you get into larger projects, you'll want to run a Postgres or MySQL server, and then you'll link it to that. But we're not going to cover that in this video specifically. So we have this project running, and we're going to go ahead in Python. This is how we're going to run the Django project. We're going to do Python 3 manage.py, and then just simply run server. And it gives us a warning. We have a bunch of migrations, and that's because Django comes default with admin models for an admin dashboard, and we haven't migrated those into a database just yet. So we're going to stop this with a Control-C now that we know it runs properly. We're going to do a Python 3 manage.py make migrations. So that's going to build out the migration files to tell the database what needs to change. Okay, nothing there. We're going to do a Python 3 manage.py migrate. So this is where it's actually going to modify the database to fit those migrations, which you can see it does very quickly. Now we can go back to Python 3 manage.py run server. And we have a server running at 127.0.0.8000. So it's going to run on our local IP with a port of 8000. So if we go to Google Chrome, open a new browser and paste that in the new browser, we get a little notification just saying, hey, you installed Django. Great. Now, if we also go to /admin, you'll see a Django admin dashboard. Now, what are the username and password? Well, we don't have one because we haven't set that up yet. So let's go ahead and do that. And I know I'm moving quick through this video. Follow along, it's great. This is kind of the simpler side of things. I just want to kind of create a shorter video. So feel free to pause and go back a few times. But we're going to stop the terminal and we're going to do a Python 3 manage.py create super user. Okay, so this is going to create an admin that will allow us access to the Django admin dashboard. It's going to ask for a username. I'm going to leave a blank to use Poya. Email address, I'm going to do let's see. Yeah, I'll do tim@poyadev.com. Password is going to be, I usually do like new_pass for new passwords, new_pass. Okay, and then we're going to go up and run the server again. And now we can use Poya, oops. I messed that up. And then now we see access to our Django admin dashboard. And we can click on users and see that we are the only user currently in existence. And we have staff access, which gives us access to the admin dashboard. Now, standard users don't have access to this. Okay, so we already have a Django project up and running now. And we can also go to localhost 8000. It's the same thing as 127. So if you find that 127 doesn't work for you, try localhost. If localhost doesn't work for you, then try 127. So now we're going to go into our settings page. And under installed apps, we need to add our first API folder that we've added. So we're going to add first API. And I'm going to kind of walk you through how to build out kind of the initial aspects of an API with Django. So we're going to save that. And now it knows that it needs to look in the first API folder for different things. So we have a views file here, but we also want a URLs file. So we're going to go to our first Django project and copy the urls.py file over to first API. And we're going to open that up. Okay. So this is our first API urls.py file. And for now, we're just going to kind of comment this out. Oops, because we don't have anything to link to yet. And then let's take a look. In here, this is our first Django urls.py file. Add a path that's going to be, say, API/v1.0. This is our version 1 of our API. And it's going to go to a keyword called include, and we're going to include our first API.urls file, and then we're going to need to import include from Django.urls as well. So what this is doing is it's telling the server that if a user types out a path such as, oops, that's JavaScript quote, HTTP localhost or 127.0.0.1 8000 / API/v1.0. Anything after this is going to go to this file, our first API, to match that URL. So this is kind of the base URL for this, and then save, and in first API, we're going to add it in here. Okay. Now in our views file for now, let's just create a simple view. Okay, so now I like something called class-based views, and we're going to use an API view from a library called REST framework. So we're going to stop our server, and we're going to run a Python 3-m pip install. So this is our common library installation command. And we're going to install Django REST framework. Okay. And then in our views.py file, we're going to import, I already have it copied here, from REST framework.views, import API view. So this is going to allow us to create an API view. I'll show you what that means here in a second. We're going to do a class. Let's just name first API, and then API view. Now, in this class, we have several different functions that we can call. We can call it get, we can call it a post, a delete, a put. There's a lot of options. So in typical REST framework requests, you have, or HTTP requests, you have different options. For this, we're going to do a simple get request. It's going to be get self, and then we're going to do a request. So we're importing the request, and then format equals none. And now we have this function that we have to return a response for. So we're going to return we're going to import a response object from REST-framework.response. We're going to return a response object. And then we're going to return a response. And there's a couple of options here. You can include a JSON object, and then you can also set a status element. So we're going to return a status of 200, for instance. And we're going to save this. So now in our URLs first API, we're going to have a path. Let's just do a blank path. So any request to this will then forward to our first, let's see, what was the name? First API. I'm actually going to capitalize that. And we're going to import that from .views, import first API, and save that. And let's see what happens when we run the server. Okay, we have a couple of errors. I did something wrong. Oh yes, .as view on our URLs file. Save. Okay, so now let's take a look. Refresh this. Okay, nothing's found because we don't have anything except for a blank URL. But if we go to /API/v1.0, then it should return, oh, and one more slash. Let's see. Oh, because it's expecting something in there. Let's take a look here. Let's save that. Do a blank URL there. Okay, template does not exist. So we're not returning an HTML template from from our view function. We're just returning a response. So if we have Postman, it's another tool I recommend. I don't know if I have that installed here. Oh, I do. Okay. So if you have a tool called Postman, this is a good way to check REST API URLs. So we'll get it started up. And what we should see is a 200 response. Let's skip that and I'll sign in later. Okay. So we're going to do a new tab with a get request. And we're going to do HTTP localhost 8000/API/v1.0. We're going to send that, and we see a 200 response with a blank data like you'll see here. Now, if I add in here some sort of dictionary or JSON object, such as, or it's a Python dictionary object that it's looking for. So we just do test. This is a test, and we'll save that. Django automatically updates, and we'll send the request. And now you'll see that data come through. So that's your first API call right there. Now what we can do is we can separate our different URLs. So for this one, we can change the path to say test our first API. This is a really long URL. I don't recommend that. So we're going to take that. Now if we run the same request, we're going to get nothing. We're going to get an error, 404 not found, because we've added now this URL, which will link back to this is a test. Okay. Now in our views.py file, there's also options to do like a post request, which is where you send data to the server from a front end typically. And to do that, you just do a simple post request. Okay, and we're going to say return MSG. I use that for message. This is a post request, and we're going to save that. And then, so if we run this, it should go to our get request response. Okay, and it does. But if we change this to a post request, it then sends it to the post method in our Python views.py file, right? And the same goes for put. You can see here the options. There's put, patch, delete. The rest of these aren't nearly as common, but these top 5 are fairly common ones to use. So now in here, let's go through the process of importing data to our post request. So typically the data will come in the form of a request.object request.body or request.data. So let's set a variable saying data equals request.data. Okay, so all the data that comes in from our request is going to be stored in the data variable in Python. And let's create a quick calculator. So let's do a quick addition calculator where we say, hey, let's pull two numbers from data. So our calculation equals data, and we're going to pull num1 object from it. We're going to add it to data num2 object. Now, in our response, we're going to return calculation, or let's change this to total. And we're going to return our calculation, the value that we get from these. Now, the data that comes in should be formatted as a number. Let's find out. So in Postman, what you can do is go to body. We're going to go to a raw body, and I like to just select JSON text or JSON data. And we're going to add some brackets and add number1 is going to equal, let's say, 5. And num2 is going to equal, say, 17. Okay. And now we're going to send this as a post request. And we see a total of 22. So 5 plus 17 is 22. And that's all happening just right there. So that's how easy it really is with Django to create an API. You can do your calculations, you can send in data. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. This will come more useful when it comes to databases and stuff. But say we want to, instead of running a post request, we just want to throw the numbers in a URL. What we can do is take this path and we can add in here a / and then a number1 / num2. And I believe this is the right formatting. We'll find out here in a second. But then in our views.py file under get, we will do, let's see, self.request. We'll do num1 and num2. Now, these values have to match up with the values that we put in here, okay? So we're going to save that. We're going to create a new request. This is going to be a get request. And instead of creating a body element, we're going to add the numbers in our URL. So we're going to do, say, a 3 and a 12. And then let's copy this data, or this, let's actually not copy it. Let's do a calculation equals num1 plus num2, because it's just taking the values from right here. And let's return these as get request total and return our calculation. And now these will typically, I believe, come in as an as a string. So what we'll want to do is convert these to an integer. And I'm trying to remember, I believe it's just int. Save that. And let's see if that, okay, that should be okay. Let's see what happens here. Okay, we came up with an error, not found. Okay, so it's not finding that URL. Okay. Right, I was mixing up JavaScript and Python. So this should actually be in an arrow function. And we're actually going to set this as an int value here. So this is going to be set as an integer value here, just like this. We're going to save that, and then we're going to come over here and we're going to get rid of our integer formatting here because they are already coming in as integers. We're going to save that. And let's give that a shot. So now, okay, we see we have a calculation of 15. 3 plus 12 is 15. Let's change this to 184, sure. So this should come out as 187 if we're adding those two values together. And there you go. So as you can see, you can send in data through the URL. You can send in data through a body element. There's multiple ways. But this is what I wanted to show you, just how simple it is to set up a Django API or a REST API in Django. And in another video, we'll probably talk about models and databases and that side of things. But this is super simple how to just get started with Django APIs. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe below. It really helps me out a lot. Also, I'm going to have a lot more content like this coming out, so be sure to subscribe.